What if the most dangerous person in the room wasn't the narcissist, but the empath who knows their own darkness? Narcissists are predictable. They crave admiration like addicts crave their next fix. They manipulate openly, wear their hunger for power on their sleeves like badges of honor. You can see them coming from a mile away. But dark empaths, they're an entirely different species. They're enigmas wrapped in compassion, riddles dressed in understanding. They combine the sensitivity to feel what others feel with something far more unsettling, a direct, often unconscious connection to the shadow, that reservoir of repressed instincts, fears, and desires that lives in the basement of every human psyche. This fusion creates something rare and powerful, a psychological intelligence that can pierce beneath surfaces, read unspoken wounds, and sense what most people desperately try to hide behind their smiles and small talk. Think about empathy in its pure form. It's the ability to resonate with another's emotions. It's the bridge of compassion that connects human hearts. Beautiful, right? But when that resonance is fused with shadow awareness, when it merges with the dark undercurrent of human nature, it transforms into something sharper, something that cuts through pretense like a blade through silk. Consider a simple dinner party. Someone shares news of a promotion, smiling and accepting congratulations. Everyone else sees success. But the dark empath notices the micro-expression of doubt and the slight tremor when mentioning new responsibilities. They sense the imposter syndrome wrapped in achievement, the fear hiding beneath triumph, all within seconds, without asking a single question. The dark empath doesn't just feel. They interpret. They anticipate. They decode. They can sense the hesitation in your voice before you even notice it yourself. They catch the flicker in your eye, the momentary tightening of your jaw, the almost imperceptible shift in your posture. And they understand, often with uncanny accuracy, what that means, what you're hiding, what you're afraid of, what you desperately need but can't ask for. While others stumble through conversations in confusion, missing subtext and nuance, the dark empath sees the underlying script. They read the invisible stage directions of human interaction. The unconscious, when not denied but embraced, gives us access to immense energy and insight. That's why this type of empath cannot be ignored. They walk with one foot in the world of feeling and compassion, and the other in the abyss of the unconscious mind. To those who meet them, the dark empath feels unsettling in a way that's hard to articulate. They can validate your deepest struggle with words that feel like they've been pulled directly from your secret thoughts. Yet they can also expose your most fragile insecurity with the precision of a surgeon who knows exactly where the nerve endings cluster. Their presence has a dual edge, both soothing and intimidating, both healing and revealing. They hold the potential to heal with profound compassion, to reach into your pain and transform it with understanding. Yet they also hold the ability to wound with precision, to touch the exact spot where you're most vulnerable, and apply just enough pressure to make you crumble. Imagine a scalpel in the hands of a surgeon. In skilled, conscious hands, it saves lives, removes disease, repairs what's broken. In the hands of someone careless or malicious, it destroys. The intelligence of the dark empath is just such a scalpel. Sharp, precise, capable of healing or harming depending entirely on the consciousness wielding it. But here lies the fascination, the paradox that makes this archetype so compelling. Most people expect danger from the narcissist, the sociopath, the obvious manipulator. These are the villains we've been taught to recognize. We've learned to build walls against them. Few suspect danger could come from the empath, from the one who's supposed to feel deeply, to care, to protect, and nurture. That's exactly what makes the dark empath personality so uniquely powerful and potentially dangerous. That paradox is precisely why we need to understand this through the lens of depth psychology. The psyche is not divided into neat categories of good and evil, light and darkness, angel and demon. It's a vast, complex interplay between all these forces. The empath who denies their shadow, who refuses to acknowledge their capacity for manipulation and harm, becomes naive. They remain forever wounded, forever victimized, never understanding why they keep attracting people who use them. The empath who embraces their shadow without consciousness, without ethical integration, becomes manipulative. They may even become predatory, using their gift of insight as a weapon, their compassion as camouflage for control. But the dark empath who brings awareness to both sides, who consciously holds the tension between light and shadow, compassion and power, healing and harming, they carry a kind of dangerous wisdom. A wisdom that can terrify those still hiding from their own darkness. A wisdom that can transform those ready to face theirs. And that's the promise of this journey we're taking together. In the next 45 minutes, we'll step inside the mystery of the dark empath. We'll explore what makes them unique, why their intelligence is so piercing and unsettling. We'll examine how the shadow becomes their source of power and why this dangerous gift can either corrupt completely or redeem profoundly. Before we descend into this shadow territory together, if this resonates with your soul's journey, if you've ever felt the weight of seeing too much of, feeling things others miss, of carrying a dangerous gift, you don't fully understand, hit that like button and subscribe. Your support helps this message reach other souls wrestling with the same questions, the same doubts, the same dangerous potential. But first, we must ask the fundamental question: what truly sets the dark empath apart from every other archetype in the human psyche? Most people think empathy is simple. You're sad, I feel your sadness. You're joyful, I share in that joy. It's resonance like two strings on different instruments, vibrating in harmony when one is struck. That's ordinary empathy, beautiful, necessary, but fundamentally reactive. But dark empaths operate on an entirely different frequency. They don't just mirror emotions, they interpret them, they decode them. They sense the subtext, the unsaid, the hidden architecture of someone's inner world. Where a normal empath might cry with you in shared sorrow, the dark empath knows why you're crying, the real reason, the one buried beneath the reason you tell yourself. They see past your conscious narrative into the wound that's actually bleeding. They understand you're not really crying about the argument with your partner. You're crying about your father dismissing your feelings at age 7, about the belief that your emotions are too much, that love must be earned through perfection. The argument was just the trigger. The real wound is decades old, and the dark empath senses it instinctively. Their own pain has taught them to recognize the signature frequency of specific wounds. Imagine an emotional radar sweeping across every interaction. A typical empath's radar picks up signals: distress here, joy, their tension in this corner. But the dark empath's radar is more sophisticated, more penetrating. It doesn't just detect the signals, it decodes them completely. It tells them where the wound originated, what memory might be triggered, what defense mechanism is being deployed, what weakness could be pressed if they chose to press it. This is what makes their intelligence both fascinating and frightening. The same capacity that allows them to comfort you at depths other people can't reach also equips them to manipulate you with surgical precision. The feeling function, that aspect of our psyche that connects us emotionally to others, can be corrupted. It can transform from a bridge of genuine connection into a tool of manipulation. This happens when empathy merges with the shadow, when the ability to feel what others feel combines with access to repressed darkness, denied impulses, and the raw, unfiltered truth of human nature. The dark empath doesn't just feel what you feel. They instinctively know how to navigate those feelings, how to enter them, how to shape them, and if they wish, how to bend them to their will. A narcissist needs blunt control they dominate through force of ego. A psychopath needs fear they control through intimidation and threat. But the dark empath needs neither. Their power lies in subtlety, in invisibility, in operating beneath conscious awareness. They can make you feel deeply understood, while quietly directing your decisions. They can use compassion as a mask for influence, and you won't notice until it's far too late. You'll think they're helping you see clearly when actually they're steering your perception exactly where they want it to go. This uniqueness is both blessing and curse. Because if a dark empath chooses the path of conscious healing, they can become extraordinary therapists, profound artists, spiritual guides, people who see into the soul and speak truths others are too afraid to name. They can reach into psychological spaces that remain locked to others. They can facilitate transformation that seems almost miraculous. But if they choose the path of shadow, if they remain unconscious of their own manipulative impulses, they become psychological tricksters. They weave intricate webs of influence, extracting power from the very people who trust them most, who open their hearts and reveal their vulnerabilities, believing they're safe. Think of the archetype of the magician, a figure who can channel hidden forces, who operates in the space between visible and invisible, who commands powers that others don't understand. The magician can liberate the village from curse and disease, or the magician can bring that same village to ruin. The difference is never in the power itself. It's always in the intention, in the consciousness directing that power. But why does this radar, this penetrating emotional intelligence, point so directly toward the hidden, the vulnerable, the raw and unprotected parts of the human psyche? Where does this dangerous ability actually come from? To answer that, we must follow the path down into the depths of shadow itself, that dark mirror of the psyche, where all repressed truths live, where all denied aspects of ourselves gather in the darkness. Because it's there in the very material most of us spend our entire lives running from. That dark empaths draw their power. Everything we repress doesn't disappear. It doesn't evaporate into nothing. It sinks. It slides down into the unconscious, into what depth psychology calls the shadow. Our anger that we're not allowed to express, our envy that we're taught is shameful, our lust that violates social acceptability, our humiliation that we can't bear to remember, our fear that would make us seem weak. All these impulses we deny in order to remain acceptable, to fit in, to be loved, they gather in the dark cellar of the psyche. For most people, the shadow remains completely hidden. It leaks out in slips of the tongue, in sudden outbursts we later regret, in unconscious choices that sabotage what we consciously want. We see our shadow projected onto others. We hate in them what we deny in ourselves. But we rarely look at it directly. The dark empath has a fundamentally different relationship with this forbidden territory, whether through trauma, through heightened sensitivity, or through sheer refusal to look away from difficult truths. They tap into this shadow material. They develop intimacy with darkness, and in doing so, they gain knowledge that others cannot bear to face. Think about how this works. When you've lived through betrayal, when you felt the knife of someone you trusted slide between your ribs, you can sense betrayal in others. You recognize its scent in a room. You notice the micro-expressions, the tonal shifts, the behavioral patterns that signal dishonesty. When you've known despair intimately, when you've sat in the dark night of the soul, you understand its texture when you encounter it in someone else. When you've wrestled with your own rage, when you felt murder in your heart, even if you'd never act on it, you recognize the tremor of suppressed violence in another person's forced smile. This learning often begins in childhood for those who become dark empaths. Perhaps you grew up in a home where you had to read the emotional atmosphere constantly for your own safety. You learned to detect the subtle shift in your father's tone that meant he was about to explode. You developed the ability to sense your mother's depression before she said a word, adjusting your behavior to try to lift her mood, or at least avoid making it worse. You became a tiny, emotional detective, gathering data, reading signals, predicting outcomes, all in service of survival. What looked like empathy was actually hypervigilance. What seemed like sensitivity was actually a finely tuned threat detection system. You learned to feel what others felt because your safety depended on it. You learned to see what others hid, because missing those signs could mean emotional or physical danger. This is why the empath dark side often emerges from trauma. Not always, but frequently. The capacity to read others with such precision usually develops when reading others was necessary for survival. And this creates a complicated relationship with the gift. On one hand, you're grateful for this ability. It's helped you navigate complex social situations, build deep connections, understand people in ways others can't. On the other hand, you never chose it. It was forced upon you by circumstances that shouldn't have happened. You developed this radar not because you wanted to, but because you had to. The dark empath doesn't just sympathize from a distance. They know from the inside. Their own shadow becomes a reference library, a map, a mirror. Every dark emotion they've felt becomes a key that unlocks understanding of that same emotion in others. And this grants them a form of intelligence that feels instinctive, almost supernatural, like they're reading minds. But it's not magic. It's shadow knowledge. It's pattern recognition built from intimate familiarity with the full spectrum of human darkness. The shadow, though frightening to those who refuse to acknowledge it, is not evil in itself. It's raw energy, unshaped and untamed. It contains our creativity as much as our destructiveness, our passion as much as our cruelty. It's the reservoir of unlived life, of repressed potential, of denied vitality. For the dark empath, this means their sensitivity extends far beyond surface emotions, like happiness or sadness. They resonate with deeper registers: shame, rage, secret longing, existential despair, forbidden desire. They pick up on the layers that polite society pretends don't exist. And because they do, they can access insights others cannot. This is why people often feel both seen and exposed in the presence of a dark empath. It's like standing before someone with X-ray vision. They look at you and see not just your smile, but the grief you're trying to hide behind it. They hear not just your words, but the hesitation between them. The truth you're not saying, the lie you're telling yourself. For some, this experience is healing. Finally, someone who sees the whole truth. Finally, someone who doesn't flinch from your darkness. For others, it's terrifying. It's too much exposure, too much vulnerability, too much truth all at once. But in both cases, it's unforgettable. The encounter with a conscious dark empath leaves a mark. It changes how you see yourself, because suddenly you realize you've been seen more completely than you've ever been seen before. Here's the validation that needs to be spoken clearly. If you've always felt burdened by your own darkness, if you've carried shame for your intensity, your ability to sense too much, your strange fascination with pain and shadow, this is not sickness. This is not pathology. This is lucidity. You're not broken for noticing the shadows in yourself and others. You're awake to what most people repress, what most people deny, what most people spend enormous energy avoiding. And in that awareness lies intelligence, a dangerous intelligence, yes, but also potentially a transformative one. An intelligence that can guide you toward profound understanding if you're willing to bear its weight. But this raises the troubling question we can no longer avoid. If the empath dark side gives such powerful insight, if shadow awareness creates such penetrating perception, what prevents dark empaths from using it in destructive ways? If you can see into another person's weakness with such clarity, if you can identify exactly where they're vulnerable, how do you resist the temptation to exploit it? How do you keep from becoming the very thing you might have once feared? This is where the greatest warning appears. The shadow, if not integrated with consciousness, if not brought into relationship with ethical awareness, doesn't serve you. Instead, it possesses you. Which means the very gift of the dark empath can become their greatest curse, their heaviest burden, their path to either redemption or ruin. The dark empath is often described as the most dangerous personality type. Not the narcissist, not the sociopath, not the borderline or the psychopath. The empath who knows their own darkness. Why? Because they can feel your pain, and they know exactly where to press to deepen it. They can comfort you with one hand while quietly controlling you with the other. Their intelligence is surgical, precise, piercing, and completely invisible until you realize you've been cut. They don't announce their manipulation like a narcissist announces their superiority. They don't create obvious fear like a psychopath. They simply know you better than you know yourself. And that knowledge becomes either medicine or poison, depending on their level of consciousness. Here's the fundamental teaching power: without consciousness leads to possession by the unconscious. When someone has the ability to read others with such accuracy but hasn't done the inner work to understand their own shadow, well, they risk becoming an instrument of that shadow rather than a master of it. They might begin to manipulate without even realizing they're doing so. They might exploit trust not out of conscious cruelty, but out of unconscious instinct guided by shadow impulses that whisper seductively, "Here lies weakness. Here's an opening. Use it." In relationships, this pattern creates devastating dynamics. The dark empath alternates between healer and tormentor, savior and saboteur, the one who understands you most deeply and the one who wounds you most precisely. They can bind others with invisible cords of intimacy, creating dependencies that feel like love but function like extraction. They feed on the vulnerabilities they uncover, drawing power and validation from the very people who've opened their hearts in trust. Think of it through metaphor. A magician conjures flames from invisible air, from the unseen energy that permeates everything. In the right hands and conscious hands, that fire warms the village on cold nights. It lights the darkness so people can see. It cooks the food that nourishes bodies. But in the wrong hands, in unconscious or malicious hands, that same fire burns homes to ash scars. Children consumes everything it touches until nothing remains but destruction. The dark empath holds such fire. They wield such power. They can ignite illumination that transforms lives, or they can scorch the soul until nothing living remains. The danger is never in the power itself. The danger lives entirely in the absence of responsibility, in the lack of conscious integration, in the refusal to face what they're capable of. But this danger doesn't only threaten others. It haunts the dark empath themselves, often more severely than anyone else. Because when you live so close to the shadow, when you spend your days navigating the darkness in yourself and others, you're constantly at risk of projection. You might see in others what you're terrified to acknowledge in yourself. You might manipulate because you dread being manipulated. You might harm preemptively because you're secretly nursing your own unhealed wound, defending against a threat that lives more in memory than present reality. Many dark empaths live in this private torment. They crave to help, they genuinely want to heal, yet sometimes they inflict harm almost against their own will. They long for truth and authenticity, yet sometimes they weave illusions without quite meaning to. They feel split between opposing forces, the healer and the destroyer, the savior and the saboteur, the light bringer and the one who snuffs out light. Picture the dark empath at 3 in the morning replaying a conversation. They helped a friend see a relationship pattern. The friend had a breakthrough, cried, thanked them profusely. But now doubt creeps in. Did I help them see their truth or subtly impose my interpretation? Was that genuine insight or projection of my own unresolved issues? This is the torment of the awakening. Dark empath constantly second-guessing, analyzing their own motives, wondering if they're helping or harming. And sometimes the answer is both. Sometimes the insight was real and the delivery manipulative. Sometimes intention was pure and execution contaminated by shadow. And in this split state, the line between healing and harming blurs until they can barely tell which they're doing anymore. Am I helping this person see clearly, or am I gaslighting them? Am I offering genuine insight, or am I manipulating their perception? Am I being compassionate, or am I being controlling? These questions haunt the dark empath, who's beginning to wake up to their own complexity. The experience of participation mystique describes a psychological state where boundaries dissolve between self and other. The dark empath can lose themselves in another person's psyche, merging with their emotions, their wounds, their darkness. And in that merging, they risk losing track of where they end and the other person begins. They absorb shadows that aren't theirs to carry. They take on pain that isn't theirs to heal. They become so entangled with another's inner world that they can't separate their own truth from projection. Imagine being a dark empath in a therapy session or deep friendship. You genuinely want to help. Your intention is pure, or at least you believe it is. But then you notice a vulnerability in the other person, a crack in their armor, a wound barely healed, a belief they hold that keeps them trapped. And in that moment, an impulse rises. Not from malice, but from shadow. The impulse to adjust their perspective just slightly, to guide their thinking in a particular direction, to use your insight to shape their reality. You catch yourself. Or maybe you don't. Maybe you follow the impulse and only later, lying awake at 3 a.m, wonder, was I guiding or controlling? Was I helping them see truth, or was I imposing my truth? Was I being a healer, or was I being a manipulator disguised as a healer? This is the exhausting vigilance required of dark empaths who are becoming conscious. Every interaction demands self-examination. Every use of their gift requires ethical scrutiny. They can never simply act from instinct because their instincts are contaminated by shadow. They must constantly monitor their intentions, question their motives, check and double-check whether they're serving the other person's growth or feeding their own ego's hunger for influence. And yet, here's what's crucial to understand. This inner war, this constant struggle between compassion and manipulation, between genuine care and shadow impulse, it isn't weakness. It's not evidence of corruption or evil. It's actually proof that the dark empath hasn't surrendered to shadow. The struggle itself demonstrates that consciousness is still present, still fighting, still choosing. The moment you stop questioning your motives is the moment you've been fully possessed by shadow. The fact that you feel this tension, that you wrestle with it, that you sometimes hate yourself for the impulses you feel, this is evidence that you're still on the path of integration rather than dissolution. But we've reached a threshold here. A decision point. A moment of existential choice that every dark empath must eventually face. There are 2 paths forward from this recognition. The first path is to continue wielding this intelligence unconsciously, to let shadow impulses guide your actions while you tell yourself stories about helping, about healing, about being a good person who cares deeply. This path leads to becoming a psychological trickster, charming, insightful, magnetic, and ultimately destructive. You extract power from those who trust you. You build relationships on manipulation rather than genuine connection. You accumulate influence while your soul slowly corrodes. And eventually, despite all your intelligence and insight, you end up isolated. Because people eventually sense, even if they can't articulate it, that something isn't right. That behind the compassion lies something else. Something that takes more than it gives. The second path is the painful work of individuation, the integration of shadow into consciousness. This means becoming whole by reconciling light and shadow, conscious intention and unconscious impulse, the healer and the potential harm doer. It means owning your power instead of denying it or being owned by it. It means transforming fire into light instead of letting it burn everything down. For the dark empath, individuation isn't optional. It's survival. Without it, You remain trapped in the tortuous dance of healer-saboteur, forever cycling between helping and harming, between connection and manipulation. With it, you step into your true role, not as perfect saint, not as pure healer, but as a conscious guide who knows both light and darkness, and can therefore navigate both territories. But here's what integration actually requires, and it's more demanding than most people imagine. It demands brutal, unflinching honesty with yourself. You must be willing to say, yes, I can manipulate. Yes, I can wound. Yes, I can use my sensitivity and insight for harm. I have this capacity. It lives in me. Only by naming this potential, by acknowledging it clearly without flinching, do you gain mastery over it. This is different from repression. Repression says, I would never harm anyone. I'm only compassionate. I'm only good. That's denial, and denial feeds the shadow. It makes the shadow stronger, pushes it deeper into unconsciousness, where it operates with even more power because you're not watching it. Integration says, I could harm, I could manipulate. But I will not. I choose not to. That's responsibility. That's conscious power. That's the difference between being possessed by your gifts and being the conscious master of them. And once you make this shift, once you truly integrate, rather than repress, something alchemical begins to happen. The very shadow knowledge that made you dangerous begins to transform into something else entirely. Poison becomes medicine. The capacity to wound becomes the capacity to heal precisely where healing is needed. The ability to manipulate transforms into the ability to guide without controlling, to reveal without shaming, to illuminate without burning. If the narcissist's destiny is to consume others until nothing remains, and then collapse in on themselves, and the naive empath's destiny is to suffer and absorb pain until they dissolve completely into martyrdom, then the dark empath holds a radically different path. When they choose integration, when they commit to the hard work of shadow work and ethical development, their destiny is to walk as a liminal figure, someone who exists in the threshold between opposing forces, between light and shadow, between healer and trickster, between ordinary human and something more archetypal, something that touches on ancient patterns embedded in the human psyche across cultures. This is the path of what might be called the Magus, the soul sorcerer, the one who draws wisdom from both realms, conscious and unconscious light, and dark known and hidden, and uses it in service of the whole rather than in service of ego. Every culture has had versions of this archetype: the shaman who journeys into the underworld and returns with healing knowledge, the wise woman who knows both herbs and hexes, the medicine person who can cure or curse, the priest or priestess of mysteries who guards dangerous knowledge. This destiny begins with balance, with learning to walk a razor's edge. The integrated dark empath must constantly navigate between compassion and control, between perception and projection, between using insight to liberate and using it to manipulate. They're never free from the shadow. They're never cured of their capacity for harm. They're simply in conscious, ongoing dialogue with it. This makes them powerful in a way that's fundamentally different from narcissistic power or psychopathic power, but it also makes them perpetually responsible. For them, power can never be casual, never be careless. It becomes sacred. Every insight they deliver carries weight. Every wound they touch requires reverence. Every truth they reveal must be earned, not imposed. Before acting on what they perceive, they must constantly ask themselves, am I illuminating or am I manipulating? Am I serving their growth or feeding my ego? The daily practice of this path requires specific concrete disciplines. Shadow work becomes non-negotiable. This means regular, honest self-examination through journaling, through therapy, with someone who understands depth psychology, through deep conversations with trusted guides, who can call out your blind spots and shadow possession when it appears. The questions become constant companions. Where did I see my own shadow projected onto others today? When did I feel tempted to use my insight for control rather than healing? What am I seeing in someone else that I'm refusing to acknowledge in myself? These aren't comfortable questions. They're designed to make you uncomfortable, to keep you honest, to prevent you from slipping into unconscious manipulation while telling yourself stories about being helpful. One powerful practice is the shadow inventory. Regular written examination of darker impulses. Not to judge or shame, but to acknowledge. This week I felt envious of my friend's success. This week I steered conversation to look wise. This week I sensed vulnerability and felt tempted to exploit it for validation. Writing these truths removes their power to operate unconsciously. What you can name, you can integrate. What you deny continues controlling you from darkness. Another essential practice is finding what Jung called a temenos, a sacred container for shadow work. This might be a therapist's office, a trusted friend who understands depth psychology, or a private journal. The key is having space where you can speak the unspeakable and face what you've been taught to deny. Creative expression becomes another essential practice: art, writing, dance, music, any form that allows shadow material to emerge and be witnessed without having to act on it destructively. Active imagination and the practice of dialoguing with shadow figures and impulses in symbolic form helps integrate them rather than being blindsided by them. And perhaps most importantly, the integrated dark empath must develop sophisticated boundaries. Not walls that keep everyone out, but conscious containers that allow them to engage empathically without absorbing everything, without losing themselves in others' pain. They learn to discern this is their shadow work, not mine to carry. I can witness their struggle without merging with it. I can offer compassion without codependence. When this integration work is done consistently, something remarkable happens. The dark empath becomes dangerous in an entirely new way. Dangerous not to people, but to illusion. Dangerous not to vulnerability, but to the lies we tell ourselves. Dangerous not to authentic emotion, but to the false selves we construct to hide from our truth. In a world built on collective denial, on pretense and performance, and carefully maintained masks, someone who can see through all of that is profoundly unsettling. Someone who refuses to participate in polite fiction, who names what everyone else is working hard to ignore, who sees the shadow in the room that everyone has agreed to pretend isn't there. This person makes others uncomfortable, but it's a necessary discomfort. They become dangerous to toxic positivity that denies legitimate suffering, dangerous to spiritual bypassing that uses enlightenment concepts to avoid psychological work, dangerous to systemic manipulation that depends on people not seeing clearly, dangerous to corporate and political gaslighting that requires collective unconsciousness to function, dangerous to the persona, that social mask we show the world when it's become a prison that separates us from our authentic selves. Think about an integrated dark empath entering a room where everyone participates in collective denial. A family pretending alcoholism isn't happening. A workplace ignoring toxic leadership. A spiritual community maintaining the illusion of transcended egos. The integrated dark empath doesn't necessarily speak immediately. They're not reckless. But their presence creates discomfort because they're not participating in the collective lie. Others can feel it even if they can't articulate why. And in being dangerous to these things, they become invaluable. Because someone must be willing to see and speak what others avoid. Someone must be able to name the shadow in the room. Someone must refuse to participate in collective sleepwalking. It's uncomfortable, yes. It's not a role that wins popularity contests. But it's necessary. And here's the peace that comes with this integration, the reward that makes the difficult path worthwhile. The internal war begins to quiet. The constant cycling between healer and saboteur, between guilt and temptation, between feeling like an angel and feeling like a demon, this gradually settles into something more stable. Not perfect, never perfect, but whole. You stop feeling split between opposing identities. You recognize I contain both. I have capacity for both healing and harming. And I choose healing not because I lack the capacity for harm, but because I'm conscious of that capacity and refuse to be ruled by it. That's wholeness. And wholeness is the most radical achievement available to human consciousness. The goal was always this: becoming who you truly are, not by rejecting darkness, but by weaving it consciously into light. The dark empath, when they complete this journey, becomes perhaps the clearest embodiment of this teaching. They're living proof that the most dangerous intelligence can be transformed. They're walking evidence that empathy doesn't have to remain naive, and shadow doesn't have to remain destructive. When brought together in conscious awareness, when held in ethical relationship, these forces create wisdom that's rare, unsettling to encounter, and desperately needed in a world that tries to split itself into false binaries of good and evil light, and dark, acceptable, and forbidden. And what emerges from this integration? Authentic relationships finally become possible. Not relationships based on manipulation or need or unconscious projection, but relationships built on truth. The integrated dark empath no longer attracts people to manipulate or people to save. They draw in others who are also on the path of individuation, others who are doing their own shadow work. Connections become based on mutual growth rather than mutual wounding. Creative flow intensifies. The shadow becomes a source of art, of writing, of music, of any form of expression that can hold complexity and paradox. What emerges is no longer performance, but emanation, authentic transmission of integrated experience that heals others, because it comes from a place of wholeness rather than woundedness. Psychic relief arrives. The burden of carrying everyone else's unprocessed pain lifts. Clear boundaries mean you can witness suffering without absorbing it, can offer compassion without drowning in codependence. You learn to see without automatically taking on, to understand without merging. And perhaps most importantly, life meaning crystallizes. You understand your role in a larger story. You recognize yourself as embodying an ancient archetype, the wise one, the guide, the soul magician, who has descended into darkness and returned with knowledge. Your legacy becomes not followers or fame, but awakened individuals. People you've helped see their own shadows. People you've guided toward their own integration. Every shadow you integrate contributes to the collective unconscious, to humanity's gradual evolution toward wholeness. This isn't just personal transformation, it's archetypal work. You're doing it for yourself, yes, but also for everyone who comes after, everyone who struggles with the same dangerous gifts, everyone who carries the same burden of seeing too much. And so we return to where we began, to the question that opened this entire exploration. What if the most dangerous person in the room wasn't the narcissist, but the empath who knows their own darkness? We can finally answer this question completely. Yes. When unconscious, when possessed by shadow rather than integrated with it. Dark empaths are supremely dangerous. They can wound with precision that leaves scars invisible to everyone except the wounded. They can manipulate through the very intimacy and understanding that should create safety. They can extract power through compassion used as camouflage. They can bind others in invisible chains that feel like love but function like possession. But transformed, integrated, made conscious, their danger transmutes completely. It doesn't disappear. It transforms. They become dangerous only to lies, only to illusions, only to the false selves and collective denials that keep humanity asleep and suffering. Their intelligence doesn't burn anymore. It reveals. It illuminates. It's fire that doesn't consume but clarifies, that doesn't destroy but purifies. It's power that doesn't bind but liberates, that doesn't diminish but expands. The intelligence of the dark empath is dangerous only when denied, only when repressed, only when left unconscious. Integrated and brought into ethical awareness, it becomes the very power that illuminates the shadow of the world, that helps others see what they've been afraid to look at, that guides the collective toward greater wholeness. So who are you now, if you've recognized yourself in this exploration? If you've walked this journey and seen your own reflection in the description of dark empaths, you're not broken. You never were. Your sensitivity isn't weakness, but antenna. Your shadow awareness isn't pathology, but wisdom. Your capacity to harm isn't evidence of evil, but evidence of power that demands conscious direction. Your ability to see too much isn't a curse, but a calling that the world desperately needs you to answer. Your role, should you choose to accept it, is to become a guide for others in shadow work. A truth teller in a world of pretense. A healer who doesn't enable, but empowers. A magician who transforms poison into medicine, who shows by living example that wholeness is not only possible, but necessary. Your responsibility is to choose consciousness over compulsion every single day. To use your insight to liberate rather than dominate. To maintain boundaries while offering genuine compassion. To continue integration work for your entire life, knowing it never ends, knowing you'll never be perfect, knowing that's not the point. Your gift to the world is modeling that wholeness is achievable, proving that shadow integration leads to liberation rather than corruption, being dangerous only to what keeps humanity trapped in unconsciousness and suffering, lighting fires that reveal rather than fires that burn. You are not accidents of trauma or random evolutionary mutation. You are necessary. The world needs people willing to descend into shadow and return with wisdom. The world needs people who refuse to look away from darkness. The world needs you. What happens next is your choice. For those recognizing themselves in this archetype, the path forward involves specific steps. Begin shadow work immediately, if you haven't already. Journal honestly about your capacity for both healing and harming. Seek therapy with someone trained in depth psychology who can guide you through integration rather than just symptom management. Find creative expression for shadow material, write it, paint it, dance it, give it form that doesn't require acting it out destructively. Start small. You don't have to dive into deepest shadow material immediately. Begin by noticing when you feel the impulse to manipulate, even in tiny ways. Notice when you shape conversations to look good, withhold information that might make you look bad, or subtly steer someone toward a conclusion while making them think they arrived there independently. Just notice it first. Don't judge or try to stop it immediately. Just develop the muscle of observation. You can't integrate what you can't see. Awareness begins with honest, non-judgmental observation of what's actually happening. Find your people. Seek out others on the individuating path. Study the work of those who've walked this territory before you. Create accountability relationships with people who can lovingly call out your shadow possession when it appears, who can see through your manipulations with compassion rather than judgment. Practice conscious empathy as a daily discipline. Before engaging deeply with anyone, pause and ask, am I serving their growth or my ego's need for influence? Notice manipulation impulses when they arise without immediately acting on them. Use your precision to reveal patterns compassionately, not to wound or punish. And trust the process. Integration is lifelong. There will be setbacks. There will be moments when you slip into old patterns, when shadow possesses you despite your best intentions, when you realize you've manipulated someone while believing you were helping them. These moments aren't failure. They're part of the path. They're opportunities for deeper awareness, for more honest integration, for renewed commitment to consciousness. For those encountering dark empaths in your life, recognition becomes crucial. Notice the pattern of feeling deeply seen and uncomfortably exposed simultaneously. Notice unsettling intimacy that feels both healing and invasive. Notice precision in emotional understanding that seems almost supernatural. Then assess consciousness. Are they using their insight to control or to liberate? Do they take responsibility for their power or deny having it while wielding it constantly? Do you feel freer and more yourself after interactions, or more confused and dependent? These questions reveal whether you're dealing with an integrated dark empath or one still possessed by shadow. Here's a practical test. After spending time with this person, do you feel more connected to your own truth or more disconnected? More capable of your own decisions or more uncertain? Seen in a way that empowers you or exposed and vulnerable? An integrated dark empath helps you see yourself clearly, including shadows, but leaves you capable of integrating what you've seen. An unconscious dark empath leaves you destabilized, dependent on their interpretation, uncertain of your own perception, and maintain your boundaries regardless. Even a conscious, well-integrated dark empath can trigger your own shadow material intensely. Their presence can make you face things you'd rather avoid. Protect your own shadow work as yours. Appreciate the mirror they offer, without merging with them, without giving away your power, without abandoning your own process of individuation. The dangerous intelligence of the dark empath is, in the end, simply the intelligence of the whole human psyche, made visible light and shadow in conversation, consciousness and unconsciousness in eternal dance. What makes them dangerous when unconscious is precisely what makes them invaluable. When integrated, their refusal to look away from darkness, their willingness to know the shadow intimately, and their capacity to hold complexity and paradox without fracturing. The future of human consciousness, the gradual evolution toward collective wholeness, depends on individuals willing to do this work, to face their shadows honestly, to integrate their darkness consciously, to become whole rather than remaining fragmented into false binaries of good and evil light and dark acceptable self and rejected self. If you've felt the weight of this archetype, if you've carried the burden of seeing too much feeling too deeply, knowing with uncomfortable precision exactly where people are wounded and vulnerable, you are not cursed. You are called to sacred work that's existed as long as human consciousness has existed. Called to walk the ancient path of the wise one, the healer, the guide, who knows both territories and can therefore help others navigate them. The world doesn't need more people hiding from their shadows, denying their capacity for harm, splitting themselves into acceptable light and rejected darkness. The world needs integrated magicians, people willing to hold fire consciously, people who transform rather than transmit trauma, people who illuminate rather than project their unprocessed pain onto others. The world needs you, specifically you, with all your dangerous intelligence, with all your unsettling insight, with all your capacity to heal or harm. Not despite these qualities, but because of them. Because when brought into consciousness, when held ethically, when wielded with responsibility and care, they become precisely what humanity needs to wake up from its collective trance. Consider this. Every great spiritual teacher, every profound therapist, every transformational guide throughout history has had to make peace with their own shadow first. They had to descend into their own darkness before they could help others navigate theirs. They had to face their own capacity for manipulation, their own hunger for power, their own potential for harm. The ones who denied these capacities became cult leaders and abusers. The ones who integrated them became healers and liberators. You stand at this same crossroads. Your sensitivity, your insight, your ability to see into the hidden depths of human psychology. These are not accidents. They're not random traits distributed by genetic lottery. They're a calling that you can answer or refuse, integrate or be consumed by use consciously or be used by unconsciously. The path of integration is not easy. It requires more honesty than most people can bear. It demands that you look at the parts of yourself you've spent your whole life running from. It asks you to admit capacities you've been taught are unforgivable. It requires you to hold contradictions that our culture insists must be resolved into simple categories of good or evil. But the reward is nothing less than wholeness. The reward is becoming fully human instead of a carefully edited version of human. The reward is authentic power instead of the false power of manipulation. The reward is relationships built on truth instead of transaction. The reward is finally being able to look at yourself in the mirror and see someone whole, someone who contains both light and darkness and has made peace with both. Remember this, always you are dangerous, only to illusion. And in a world desperate for truth, drowning in denial, suffocating under layers of pretense and performance, and carefully maintained lies, that is exactly what we need. That is exactly who you're meant to be. The intelligence you carry is both gift and burden, both blessing and curse, both power and responsibility. But it is yours. Own it, integrate it, use it wisely. And in doing so, become the light that can only shine because it knows darkness intimately has made peace with shadow and chooses consciousness anyway.